The sky above Earth's once thriving metropolis was now a bruised shade of gray, choked with smoke from alien engines that had scoured the surface. The towering remains of skyscrapers jutted out like skeletal fingers, their shattered windows framing a scene of destruction. The Clivian warriors, 8-foot-tall beings clad in metallic armor, stomped across the ruins, treating the planet as their playground. Captain Elena Voss lay prone on the cracked roof of a crumbling high-rise, her sniper rifle nestled in her arms. The cold metal felt familiar, a reassuring weight. Through her scope, she watched a group of aliens gather in a plaza below, their guttural laughter echoing off the ruins. They surrounded a trembling boy, no older than 10, his dirt-streaked face pale with terror. "Humans!" one of the warriors boomed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Fragile. Pathetic. A waste of our time." Elena's jaw tightened. She adjusted the focus of her scope, centering it on the speaker. He was the squad leader, his ornate armor gleaming even in the dim light. His arrogance radiated from every movement. Her finger hovered over the trigger. She exhaled slowly, steadying her aim. One shot, one kill. That was her mantra, drilled into her during her military days. The boy whimpered, and the leader raised his blade, clearly intending to end the child's life for sport. "Not today," Elena muttered. She fired. The crack of the rifle echoed like thunder, and the alien's head snapped back. He collapsed, a lifeless heap. For a moment there was silence. Then chaos erupted. The remaining warriors roared, their weapons drawn, scanning the ruins for the source of the shot. Elena was already on the move, crawling backward into the shadows of the rooftop. By the time she reached her hidden exit, a service hatch leading into the building's skeletal remains, the alien squad was in full alert mode. Their voices carried over the wind. "Find the coward!" one shouted. "Primitive weapons!" another sneered. "It was luck," Elena smirked. Let them think that. Let them underestimate her. That mistake would be their undoing. Sliding down a crumbling stairwell, she made her way to the lower floors, where she'd established a makeshift base. The room was sparse, a worn cot, scattered maps, and an array of weapons salvaged from both human and alien sources. She set the rifle down and checked her supplies. Ammunition was running low. The door creaked open, and a wiry man stepped in. He was older, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were sharp. Nathan, one of the few survivors who had stuck around, despite her preference for working alone. "You've stirred the nest," he said, closing the door behind him. "Had to," Elena replied, her voice steady. "They were going to kill a kid." Nathan sighed. "You can't save everyone." "I know," she said, her tone flat. "But I can take a few of them with me." He dropped a bundle of supplies on the table. "Scavenge these from an abandoned convo." "Not much, but it's something." Elena nodded her thanks and turned her attention back to her maps. "They're going to double their patrols. We need to move." Nathan hesitated. "Move where?" "There's nowhere left. It's just us, Elena. The others, they've given up. Then they'll die." Her words were cold, but her heart clenched. She couldn't afford to let despair seep in. Hours later, Elena was back in position, this time on a lower vantage point overlooking a main thoroughfare. She knew the Clivians would send reinforcements. They wouldn't tolerate defiance, even from what they considered an inferior species. Through her scope, she spotted a new group of warriors arriving, their formation tight, their movements precise. These weren't grunts, they were hunters, sent specifically to track her. "They're learning," she murmured to herself. The lead hunter barked orders in a guttural language. He gestured toward the surrounding buildings, and the squad fanned out, their advanced scanners sweeping the area. Elena's heartbeat quickened. They were closer than she liked. She adjusted her position, crawling silently to a new vantage point. From here, she had a clear line of sight to the lead hunter. She steadied her aim, but before she could fire, her earpiece crackled to life. "Elena!" Nathan's voice came through, urgent and low. "You've got company. 2 of them, heading for your building." "Got it," she replied, her voice calm despite the spike of adrenaline. She pivoted, her rifle now trained on the building across from her. 2 Clivians were scaling the exterior with unnatural ease, their clawed hands finding purchase in the cracked concrete. Elena fired twice in quick succession. The first alien fell, a clean shot through the head. The second managed to dodge, leaping onto a lower ledge. Persistent, she muttered, reloading. The surviving alien roared, his weapon aimed at her position. She rolled to the side just as a bolt of energy blasted through the wall, sending debris flying. Time to go, she whispered, grabbing her rifle and slinging it over her shoulder. Back in the labyrinthine tunnels beneath the city, Elena regrouped with Nathan. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he clutched a small device, a handheld scanner he'd managed to jury-rig from alien tech. "They're everywhere," he said. "We can't keep this up." "We don't have a choice," Elena replied. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice softening. "You're doing good, Nathan. We'll figure it out." His eyes searched hers, desperate for reassurance. "Do you really think we can win?" Elena hesitated, her mind racing with doubt. But she pushed it down. "We don't have to win. We just have to make them bleed." Nathan nodded, his resolve hardening. As the night deepened, Elena climbed back to a new perch. She set up her rifle and waited, her eyes scanning the ruins. The Clivians thought they owned Earth, thought humanity was a broken relic. But as long as she could pull the trigger, she would remind them of one thing. Humans weren't done yet. The wind carried the sound of alien footsteps, growing louder. Elena's finger rested on the trigger, steady as ever. "Round 2, she whispered. The metallic scent of blood and scorched earth lingered in the air as Elena crouched in the shadows of an abandoned subway station. The Clivian patrols above were relentless, their heavy boots echoing across the cracked pavement. She adjusted the strap of her rifle, the weight of it a constant reminder of her purpose. Tonight, she wasn't just surviving, she was hunting. Through the faint glow of her handheld scope, she tracked the movements of a Clivian hunting squad. 4 of them, their shimmering exosuits a stark contrast to the crumbling human architecture. They moved in formation, sweeping the area with their advanced scanners. Every flicker of light from their equipment made Elena's pulse quicken. "Focus," she whispered to herself, steadying her breath. Nathan's voice crackled through her earpiece. "I've got eyes on another group 2 blocks north. They're closing in fast." "Let them," Elena replied, her voice calm but sharp. "The more they come, the more bodies we leave behind." Nathan hesitated. "You're outnumbered, Elena." "Again." "I always am." The Clivian squad paused at the entrance to the subway station, their leader gesturing to the others. Elena smirked. They thought they were closing in on her, but she had laid the trap hours ago. Her eyes flicked to the tripwire she'd rigged across the darkened tunnel. The lead warrior stepped forward, his armored boot triggering the line. A deafening explosion shook the ground as a salvaged human grenade detonated, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. The nearest alien was blown apart, his metallic armor no match for the force. The others scrambled, disoriented, as dust and debris filled the air. Elena wasted no time. She emerged from her hiding spot, her rifle steady. The first shot dropped another warrior mid-scream, the bullet piercing the weak joint in his neck plating. "2 down," she murmured. The third alien roared and turned, his plasma weapon charging. Elena dove behind a concrete pillar as the searing bolt struck where she'd been standing. Heat licked at her back, but she ignored it, rolling into position and firing again. This shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward into the debris. The last warrior, the leader, lunged toward her, his speed unnatural. Elena barely had time to switch to her sidearm, firing twice. One bullet ricocheted off his armor, the other grazed his leg. He howled, his massive frame crashing into her as she scrambled to evade him. They grappled briefly in the rubble, his strength overwhelming. He snarled, pinning her down with one clawed hand. "You think this will stop us?" he growled, his alien accent thick. "You are nothing!" Elena gritted her teeth, her hand fumbling for the knife strapped to her thigh. Funny, she spat, jamming the blade into a gap in his armor. That's what they all say. The alien's roar of pain echoed through the tunnels as he collapsed, clutching at the knife embedded in his chest. Elena shoved his body off her and stood, her breaths ragged. Nathan's voice returned in her earpiece. You all right? Just a little close, Elena replied, retrieving her rifle. 3 down here. What about your side? Still clear for now. But I don't like this, Elena. They're not just patrolling anymore. They're hunting. She frowned, glancing at the bodies around her. Let them hunt. It'll make it easier to thin their numbers. Elena moved through the tunnels, her steps silent, her ears straining for any sound. The city above was alive with alien chatter. The Clivians were adapting faster than she'd hoped. She needed more than just guerrilla tactics if she was going to stay ahead of them. An hour later, she reached the rendezvous point where Nathan was waiting. His face was pale, illuminated by the faint glow of a stolen alien data tablet he was studying. Found something? Elena asked, kneeling beside him. Yeah, Nathan said, pushing the tablet toward her. I hacked into their comms. They're coordinating more squads to sweep the area. But this, he tapped the screen. This is new. They've marked something in the old tech district. Something big. Elena frowned. What kind of something? Don't know yet. Could be supplies, could be reinforcements. Whatever it is, they're protecting it. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. The tech district was a graveyard of human innovation, filled with factories and labs abandoned during the first wave of the invasion. If the Clivians were guarding it, there was a reason. We need to find out what it is, Elena said finally. Nathan looked at her like she was insane. You want to walk into their stronghold? That's suicide. It's necessary, she countered. If they're guarding it, it's important. And if it's important to them, it's valuable to us. They spent the next few hours preparing. Elena scavenged explosives and ammunition from her dwindling stash, while Nathan worked on fine-tuning a handheld jammer to disrupt the alien scanners. Good enough, Nathan said, holding up the device. It'll give you about 10 minutes before they recalibrate. That's all I need, Elena replied, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. The tech district was eerily quiet when they arrived. The once bustling factories stood like hollowed-out giants, their glass walls shattered and their interiors stripped bare. Elena crept through the shadows, her senses on high alert. Ahead, she spotted a Clivian patrol, a smaller group, just 2 soldiers guarding a makeshift barricade. She signaled to Nathan to stay back. Raising her rifle, she lined up her shot. The first alien dropped without a sound. The second turned, but Elena was faster, her bullet finding its mark before he could react. Clear, she whispered. Nathan joined her, his hands trembling as he activated the jammer. 10 minutes, he reminded her. Inside the barricade, they found what the Clivians had been protecting, a large, cylindrical device humming with alien energy. It pulsed with an ominous light, its surface etched with runes Elena didn't recognize. What the hell is this? Nathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Something they don't want us to have, Elena replied. Nathan's face darkened. Do you think we can use it? We'll find out, she said. Help me move it. As they worked, the sound of approaching footsteps reached Elena's ears. She cursed under her breath. They're coming, she hissed. We need to go. Now. Nathan scrambled to deactivate the device's locking mechanisms while Elena covered him, her rifle trained on the corridor. The first alien rounded the corner, his weapon raised. Elena fired, the recoil barely registering as the warrior crumpled. More followed, their guttural shouts filling the air. Nathan! She shouted, firing again. Hurry up! Got it! He yelled, the device finally releasing from its mount. Together, they hoisted it onto a repurposed dolly and began their retreat, the Clivians hot on their heels. Elena fired over her shoulder, her shots precise, buying them precious seconds. As they reached the surface, the first rays of dawn broke through the smog, casting an eerie light on the chaos. "This isn't over," Nathan panted. Elena nodded, her eyes steely. "No. It's just beginning." The guttural snarls of Clivian warriors echoed across the desolate streets as Elena and Nathan bolted through the ruins, the alien device rattling precariously on the makeshift dolly. Their boots crunched on broken glass and loose gravel, each sound a sharp reminder of the relentless pursuit behind them. "Elena!" Nathan shouted between ragged breaths. "They're gaining! Keep moving!" she snapped, her eyes scanning the buildings ahead. She needed a choke point, a place where the narrow paths would force their enemies to funnel in. They didn't stand a chance in open ground, not with the alien reinforcements swarming the area. She spotted an alleyway flanked by crumbling office towers and pointed. "There! Go!" Nathan turned the dolly sharply, the alien cylinder wobbling dangerously. Elena pivoted, raising her rifle to cover him. The first Clivian emerged from the haze, its glowing eyes locking onto her. It raised its plasma rifle, but Elena fired first, the recoil a satisfying jolt as the alien fell mid-charge. More followed. Elena's shots rang out in quick succession, each one a precise strike aimed to slow their advance. "Nathan, how much farther?" "There's a service tunnel about 50 meters ahead," he called back, his voice strained. Reaching the tunnel entrance, they shoved the dolly down the ramp, the cylinder clattering as it bounced on the uneven concrete. Nathan scrambled after it, his hands shaking as he tried to steady the load. Elena fired one last round, then yanked a grenade from her belt. She pulled the pin and tossed it into the alleyway, the explosion reverberating through the city. Smoke and debris engulfed their pursuers, buying precious seconds. She slid down the ramp, landing beside Nathan. "Seal the entrance," she ordered, already scanning for threats. Nathan grabbed a nearby beam of scrap metal and wedged it against the heavy door. "That's not going to hold them for long." "It doesn't need to," Elena replied. "We just need to get this thing far enough away before they regroup." The service tunnel was a labyrinth of damp concrete walls and flickering emergency lights, remnants of a time when humanity's infrastructure hadn't been reduced to ash. The device continued to hum faintly, its alien energy casting an eerie glow. Nathan glanced nervously at it. "Whatever this thing is, it's putting off some serious power. If they wanted it this badly, it must be important." Elena nodded. "We'll figure out what it does later. First, we need to get it back to the base." The sound of the barricaded door giving way echoed faintly down the tunnel, and Nathan's eyes widened. "They're in. Keep moving," Elena barked. "I'll slow them down." She stopped and turned, planting her feet firmly. The beam from her flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the far end of the tunnel where the first Clivian shapes emerged. She took aim and fired, her shots sparking against their armor. A warrior stepped forward, hefting a massive plasma cannon. Elena's stomach sank as she recognized the weapon's glowing charge. She dove to the side just as the cannon fired, the blast obliterating part of the wall behind her. Shards of concrete rained down, the dust stinging her eyes and throat. "Elena!" Nathan shouted from farther down the tunnel. "I'm fine," she called back, coughing. She rose to her knees, adjusting her aim, and fired at the warrior's weapon. The shot hit its mark, the plasma cannon sparking violently before exploding in the alien's hands. The Clivian screamed, collapsing in a heap. Nathan's voice crackled in her earpiece. "I've found an old maintenance hatch. It leads to the surface. Hurry!" Elena retreated, her rifle slung over her shoulder as she sprinted to catch up. She found Nathan wrestling with a rusted hatch, the device precariously balanced beside him. "Help me!" he grunted. Together, they shoved the hatch open, the corroded metal groaning in protest. Sunlight streamed through the opening, blinding them momentarily. "Go!" Elena ordered, helping Nathan push the dolly up the incline. She climbed out after him, her rifle immediately scanning for threats. They were in an overgrown park, its once manicured lawns now a wild tangle of weeds and debris. The ruins of a monument loomed nearby, its inscription too worn to read. "We're exposed." Nathan said, his voice trembling. I know, Elena replied. But we're close to the safe house. Move! The Clivians were relentless. As they neared the edge of the park, the sound of alien voices and heavy footsteps grew louder. Elena spun, her rifle ready. The first warrior burst through the underbrush, its weapon raised. Elena fired without hesitation, the bullet striking true. The alien fell, but two more took its place. Nathan turned, panic in his eyes. We can't outrun them! We don't need to! Elena shouted. Keep going! She grabbed another grenade and pulled the pin, hurling it into the advancing group. The explosion rocked the ground, flames and shrapnel tearing through the Clivian ranks. The safe house was just ahead, a fortified bunker hidden beneath the skeletal remains of an old library. Nathan pushed the dolly through the narrow entrance, and Elena followed, sealing the door behind them. The silence that followed was deafening. Both of them collapsed against the walls, their chests heaving as they caught their breath. Nathan finally broke the silence. That was too close. Elena nodded, wiping the sweat from her brow. We made it. That's what matters. They turned their attention to the alien device, its hum growing louder in the enclosed space. Nathan retrieved his toolkit, his hands steadier now that they were temporarily safe. What do you think it does? He asked, prying open a panel. Something they didn't want us to have, Elena said, watching as he worked. Inside the device, Nathan found a series of glowing cores, their energy pulsing rhythmically. This isn't a weapon, he murmured, his brow furrowing. It's a relay. Some kind of communications hub. Elena's stomach tightened. A relay? For what? Nathan's face darkened. If I'm reading this right, it's designed to call for reinforcements. A lot of them. Elena cursed under her breath. Then we just brought the enemy's beacon to our front door. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their situation sinking in. Nathan finally looked up, determination replacing the fear in his eyes. If this thing can call reinforcements, maybe we can reprogram it. Turn it against them. Elena considered the idea. You think you can do it? He nodded, though doubt flickered across his face. I'll need time. Then take it, she said. I'll make sure we have it. Elena rose, her rifle in hand, and moved to the bunker's entrance. Outside, the Clivian forces were regrouping, their guttural cries a reminder that the fight was far from over. But for the first time, Elena felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity wasn't finished yet. And if this relay could be turned into a weapon, it might be the start of something more, a way to strike back. Let them come, she whispered, her grip tightening on her rifle. We're not done fighting.